Today, I talk with my good friend, Carl Teichrib, who is one of the most interesting people I know. Not only is he just one of the most wholesome people on the planet, he does some of the most interesting work that I have seen in ministry. He focuses on how modern movements are reshaping society towards more of a man-centered spirituality. He goes to so many places around the world just to do this research. The Parliament of World Religion, Burning Man, UN-related conferences, you name it. Anywhere where interfaith dialogue, globalism, or new spiritualities are happening, he wants to know about it and be involved in it. He's written a book called Game of Gods. It's actually back on my bookshelf right there. And it's a phenomenal resource on all of these topics. I even had him peer review a few chapters from my own book about New Thought. He's just a wealth of information. So with that kind of resume, you might be wondering, what would I ask Carl on to talk about today? And it's going to be a surprising topic because it's actually the one thing that catapulted him into doing this kind of research. And it's Freemasonry. I don't get asked a lot about this topic, but I have to admit, I have always been very curious about it. And I know next to nothing about Freemasonry, other than there's been a lot of people in our country and history, religious leaders like Joseph Smith, who has been a Freemason. But how much does this really matter? What goes on in a Masonic lodge? What do they teach? What's the big deal? Most people that I've talked to that have been into Freemasonry just go to hang out and play cards. So what's the big deal? Turns out there's a little more to it than that. Carl has really done his homework in this regard. So he shares his story about how Freemasonry played a part in what he does today. But he also shares first a bird's eye view of what is Freemasonry? What do they teach? And then we get into more details. What does that look like? What are these teachings that we're talking about? What are these oaths? What do they actually teach? And why is there this disconnect between the actual spirituality of Freemasonry versus those that are in the lodge that don't even believe that at all? He responds to the question, can you be a Christian and a Mason at the same time? So I ask him a lot of questions in that vein and a lot of peripheral questions. I would love for you all to be familiar with Carl's work. So be sure to check out the description. He's very thorough in what he does, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. So I hope that you enjoy this interview. Carl, thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Oh, Melissa, this is going to be fun. I have been looking forward to our conversation for a while. This will be good.
Me too. I love following your stuff. You and I kind of have a similar love, I suppose, for research where we read the books, but we also like to go into the spaces. And that
Right.
was that was one of the things that I really loved about what you do is you go down, you talk to the people face to face, and you're very, kind and I think your approach is brilliant because you're very firm. You know where your limits are, but you also want to engage with them. So we'll talk more about that later. But first, let's introduce you. Who are you and what is your background?
Boy, what is my background? I'll go with that first, Melissa, because
Sure.
it's because it kind of sets a bit of the tone, and that's important. My background is I grew up on a grain farm. I have had two loving Christian parents. My mom has passed away. My father is still alive. He's a tough guy, tough old guy. On the farm, you kind of get to be like that. I live on the Canadian prairies, and I actually, my wife and I have built an off-grid house, and we are living on a piece of property that as a child I would go back into hunting and doing all kinds of farm boy kind of stuff. So my background is really simple. I'm just a country boy, that lives out in the sticks of Manitoba, Canada,
Mhm.
and do all the, I did all the farm boy things that you can do, swimming holes and dirt bikes and hunting. And of course, dad saying, get to work, boy, get to work. Uh, but it
Yeah.
was good. it was really good. And I have no regrets that way, growing up where I did and how we did. It's almost a rarity in this
Mm,
age that we live in today when I hear young people talking about their background, and I then go into my own, and I realize, oh, this is I lived through a revolutionary period. So I'll just kind of give you a little context here. I teach a
sure.
class at Miller College of the Bible, a
Mm,
small Bible college in Southwest Saskatchewan. And I was trying to bring home the fact that my students are living on the other side of the revolution. And I couldn't really figure out how to convey that to them. And then I started telling them about what my my age of 10 turning year was. When I turned 10, my dad was like, now you get to drive the truck on the dirt roads. You don't need me to help you. I don't need to be in I don't need to be in the truck with you. You've driven enough already. Away you go. Full responsibility. You're gonna be on the tractor. You're gonna be cultivating. I'm gonna be training you how to drive the combine pretty soon. And as I'm talking, and I'm giving the kids a lot more detail than this, because a lot of things happened, I'm watching the students' faces and they are in shock. And my wife is in the back of the room, and Leanne is hearing the murmur as the kids are going, what kind of parents were these?
yeah.
I'm like, well, that's growing up in the 70s on a farm. So there's a disconnect with the way our culture operates today in its hyper safe, politically correct mode.
Hmm.
you know, there
Yeah.
was a wholesomeness and also a work ethic that came with it.
Yeah.
Um, I began doing research as in the field of worldviews back in the early 1990s, and this is kind of where my story, I guess, begins in terms of the research, the author side of it. I don't have, by the way, I don't have a formal degree. I'm not, don't have a list of acronyms behind my name. I went to Bible college. I got an associate degree. Whatever. That doesn't that doesn't mean much in terms of the
Sometimes
academic
it
world.
really doesn't. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. But I love learning. I always loved learning.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know?
Same.
Yeah, and I think that kind of drives you a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
Co-
and I say that as somebody who's working on their fourth degree. It's not, I just love learning. And I think that
I
that's
know.
part of it. Yeah, for sure.
And I'm actually jealous of you when when I see you posting that, hey, you're doing the schooling and I'm like, oh man, um,
I have
yeah, to be
access
able.
to you guys though. I have access to very smart people. That's really what it is. I'm like, how can I talk to like the most professory people I can and they can teach me things. That's what it is. It's like I'm frustrated with this point or this theology. Like tell me how this works. And it's just really nice to have those people to talk to.
It's great when iron can sharpen iron.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, exactly.
really, really good.
Mhm.
So yeah, my background in terms of my educational perspective is not that's not remarkable by any stretch. That's for sure. I mean, I quit high school at the end of grade 11. In the words of my favorite Western author, Louis L'Amour, I found that high school interfered with my education, so I left.
I like that.
So,
That's really
you
good.
know, so
Yeah.
in a way, I mean, this sounds terrible because Melissa, in a way, I'm like, yeah, who the heck am I? Like, why would people listen?
Hmm.
But I've been very fortunate. So, in the early 1990s, I was working for a community-based healthcare organization, working with senior citizens, helping them stay in their home as long as possible.
Mm.
And I had to answer to a board of directors, wonderful people, great people, all community folks, people I grew up with, people I know. And every one of them at that point in time were either members of the Masonic Lodge, the Eastern Star, which is a women's auxiliary, or one of the other three affiliated lodges that we had in our little itty bitty village of 800 people.
Hmm.
And so I was under a lot of pressure. This is early 1990s. There wasn't, the internet wasn't there publicly. I didn't know there was books written on Freemasonry from a Christian point of view. All I could do was try to wrestle through, okay, what is it that you guys are about? Because they would never tell me anything. Like, are you about politics? No. Are you about religion? No. What are you about? We're about making good men better. Well, whip-de-doo. If I want to be better, how about after work I go help my dad on the farm? Or tackle the list of jobs I need to do in my own household. What is this about being made better? This assumes I'm good to begin with, and I'm not, and I know that.
Did you grow up in a Christian household?
Yes, my parents,
Okay.
both of them, were strong believers. And I grew up in a great church, good people, all again a small town, rural kind of a setting. Um, and so I had no interest in joining Freemasonry. I never did join Freemasonry, but there was this pressure to become a member of the lodge. And finally, two of my board members took me aside for a supper meeting and grilled me about why I wasn't joining the lodge. After all, I mean, I'm connected into the community, I'm very involved in the town, and I have this rapport with the people. How come you're not joining Freemasonry? And we went through that typical shtick again, are you about politics? Are you about religion? Oh, we're about making good men better. And finally, one of them looked at me and said, Carl, we're not Satanists. I'm like, okay, like, where did that come from? And bells were going off in the back of my head, and I was absolutely floored by a statement like this. It didn't make any sense to me. So I figured I needed to find out what the organization was about. Our church had in our constitution for our church a very interesting statement that said you could not be a member of the church I was attending, the church I grew up in, and be a member of a secret society, which was a fascinating little clause. I never understood why it was there, but as I started digging into Freemasonry, then it became very apparent. So, again, I don't have an academic background. The only thing I could think to do was go to the source,
Yeah.
start digging into their own works.
Yeah.
I collected their rituals, I collected their works of philosophy, I collected their historical volumes. I spent time reading, going into their constitutions. That's it. Nothing special.
Yeah.
Just diving into their stuff without any filter from an outside third party perspective. I'm so glad, Melissa, I did.
Yeah.
Be- because then I could own what I have been researching. Then I could finally grasp, okay, I have to wrestle with this.
Mm.
And you've done the same thing with New Thought. I mean, you came out of New Thought, but now as a Christian, you have to wrestle with what it was that you were immersed in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I'm going to quickly pause my story by saying I really appreciated the approach you took in your book.
Thanks.
Because it was excellent. You took both an academic and first person approach.
Mm-hmm.
You brought both the history into it and the current flavor of the day. And you did it with grace and truth. It's a very gracious book. And I was like, when you told me that you were going to be writing this book on New Thought, I was like, yes, somebody needed to do it. And I'm so glad it was you.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
yeah. So again, it goes back to, all right, how do we find out what this is about? Let's go and, tackle the sources. Let's go to where it's happening.
Yeah.
Bingo. That's it. Nothing special. And so it took me a while to collect works of Freemasonry, and I spent a lot of time in that world. And then it didn't take long, and you'd start jumping into other associated areas because now you're all of a sudden seeing worldviews. You're seeing spiritual perspectives, and from a biblical worldview, you're contrasting and comparing, and you're going, this doesn't fit. This doesn't fit the biblical worldview. There's a problem, a contrast between what Freemasonry is teaching and what the Bible is saying. And it didn't take long, and I ended up, because of the research work, going into the works of philosophy, spinning out into other areas, Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, then the New Age movement, taking a look at New Thought. I did that down the road as well. And then seeing that, there's commonalities that go beyond the lodge, that there are worldviews and there are principles that I can take and see, okay, can I find these principles in the realm of culture, in politics? And it wasn't long, and all of a sudden, my hobby got out of control. And I, and that's exactly what happens, you know.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you have a passion to try to, figure out what's going on, and you've now got a few tips that'll help you to kind of work through worldviews and to be able to work through, the core of what you're working through, what you're reading, what you're studying. And it didn't take long, and I was tackling it from an international perspective, looking at it from the role of global governance, interfaithism.
Mhm.
It just snowballed and snowballed. And the principle behind all of that was universalism. Freemasonry is saying we are universal. We are looking for uh, putting forward a system of universalism, even the sense of our approach to religion as Freemasonry is about universalism. In fact, that was one thing, Melissa, that really struck me. It wasn't the oaths. Yes, they're there. And yes, the oaths are bad. Biblically, our yes is to be yes, our no is to be no. Don't get involved in a spiritual contract like what you will see within the lodge, because that is a form of a spiritual contract, the oath that you're taking. That wasn't what concerned me so much, though it is important. What really hit me was this is about universalism. This is every knee can bow around a common altar, whether you are a Mohammedan or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hindu. All can unite around the common altar of Freemasonry and venerate or be attached to the great architect of the universe, which is the language that they use for God.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, Jesus Christ is the only way. Jesus Christ is the only one who defeated the grave. And
Mhm.
because he is the author of life, he can make that claim, and he can engage literally as the one who reverses the curse of death. Muhammad can't do it.
Mhm.
Moses can't do it. Buddha's still on the ground. None of the Hindu deities can do it. I can't do it.
Mhm.
There's no enlightened Carl that can somehow magically do this. I'm not the author of life. I'm a part of the creation. I'm not the creator. That Romans 1 distinction. And so, Melissa, that was probably what really struck me the most. That was a hard hit, was all of a sudden, oh, I can't join the lodge. And it wasn't that I wanted to. Trust me, I had enough meetings I was already going to. I didn't want to join the lodge, but it struck me in a serious way. This is, at the most basic element, an interfaith perspective. You're willing to ignore the important truth claims, not just of Christianity, but in fact of all religions, because there's contradictions all the way through. But Christianity, specifically with the exclusivity of Jesus Christ, I have to, in a sense, shove that off to the side
Mhm.
as I gather around this common altar, this altar of universalism. And the other thing that hit me as well was the sense of perfectibility. Within the lodge, it is repeatedly, and again, you see this in the literature, it is repeatedly stated that you are working to become a perfected man, that you are looking to perfect oneself. One of the symbols, a really interesting symbol that that demonstrates this, is called the ashlar, a stone. So you begin as a rough stone, a rough ashlar. It's coarse. It's been quarried out of the ground, and the stone is it's without really any form. It's not a worked piece. And then your time in the lodge, your time in Freemasonry, moves you towards becoming the perfect ashlar, the perfect cubed block, the perfect brick in the wall. For all of you music lovers who all of a sudden will recognize that song from way gone by years. But yes, you become that brick in the wall,
Mhm.
and you are this perfect cut stone, representing the fact that you have now reached enlightenment, perfection, perfectibility. And you see that language all through the works of Freemasonry and even into the rituals of Freemasonry. So, I've got some issues with that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to perfect myself. Your rituals aren't going to perfect me. We're flawed human beings. The only one that can perfect us is the one who is perfect. And it's us resting in his perfection, not our own,
Yeah.
period.
Amen to that. Yeah, I had no idea. We've been friends for years, and I did not realize that it was this little accidental run-in with Freemasonry that started your entire ministry basically in what you do, your
Yes.
research. Yeah. And so, oh man, okay, so that is a what I would consider a 10,000 foot view of Freemasonry. Let's zone in a little bit more. I have so many questions, follow-up questions
Okay.
about this. So, what to start with? Okay, well, let's start with that. How did Freemasonry even start then?
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it's an historic organization. It's an historic movement. That's maybe a better way of saying it. That goes back over 400 years in its speculative sense, where it is today. Um, it pulls out of the stonemason guilds of the medieval period in Europe. It pulls out of the cathedral builders of the time, and it moved from being operative, that is, your hands get dirty, you're literally working with stones, you're literally working with mortar and bricks. It moved from that to becoming speculative, where all of a sudden the tools and the techniques of the stonemason are actually a form of metaphor to help build you into a perfected man or into a better person.
Hmm.
Now, Masonry itself is so loaded with its legends, its lore, its historical kind of claims. You're going to have arguments pretty much on every side of the debate, every side of the conversation. Oh, some Masons will say, no, it's much older than 400 plus years. It goes back to the time of King Solomon's temple and the building of his temple. And there's so much of that within Masonic literature that it comes out of the construction of the temple, and it has this lineage. And others will say, no, it goes back to Moses. And there's others who are going, no, we're right back to the heart. We're right back to the first man, back to Adam. And I'm like, yeah, actually, yeah, you are. You are. Genesis chapter 3 specifically. That's really where you go back to. In fact, I'm going to read you a quote, and you tell me if this fits with Genesis chapter 3. This is from Manly P. Hall, the book The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, first published in 1923. This is the first book I read on Masonry. He was a Canadian, and he was a very prominent Masonic historian and philosopher. Man is a god in the making. And as in
You lost
yeah, I
me
don't.
already.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Melissa.
Keep going.
Man is a god in the making, and as in the mystic myths of Egypt, on the potter's wheel, he is being molded. When his light shines out to lift and preserve all things, he receives the triple crown of Godhead and joins that throng of master masons who, in the robes of blue and gold, are seeking to dispel the darkness of night with the triple light of the Masonic Lodge. Here's another one for you. And by the way, if your audience is interested, I for a time, for 9 years, I published an online journal dealing on worldview issues,
Mhm.
global governance issues, a kind of a convergence of all of these different points of view that we're looking at. It's called Forcing Change, looking at the forces of change, the intellectual, political,
Okay.
um, philosophical points of change. And you can go to forcingchange.org. On the very front page, one of the articles that's there is on Freemasonry. This is where you're going to find some of these quotes.
Okay.
I just simply compiled them for people. Actually, interestingly, I'll back this up. I
Sure.
compiled this originally for a 32nd degree Mason.
Really?
I was speaking at a conference back in, I think, 2013 in Branson, Missouri. And I had mentioned in my talk, just briefly, nothing more than in passing,
Yeah.
Freemasonry. And this guy approaches my book table and talks to my wife, and he shows my wife his ring, his Masonic ring, and says, "I want to talk to your husband." Okay, this is where the shoe drops. We're like, all right, where's this gonna go?
Yeah.
And he's like, I've been a Christian, I'm a fairly new Christian, but I've been a Mason since the early 70s.
Huh.
What's wrong with it?
Huh.
And so I went into the issue of universalism and perfectibility, and his wheels are spinning, and he's going, okay, yes. And now that I'm thinking about it, yes, I have to do some more homework. I've got to do some digging. Well, I'm like, you got a Masonic library in your lodge. I'll pull a report together based on the material I have.
Hmm.
I'll send it to you. And then you can double, triple check all the sources, make sure it's in context, and then reject what I have to say if it's wrong. Or if it's correct, you got some hard thinking to do. You've got to make a choice between one or the other, Christ or the lodge. Which is it, Christ or the craft? And he came back to me like maybe 6, 8 months after I had sent him the report saying, I have sent my letter of resignation and I cannot be both a Christian and a member of the lodge. It's incompatible.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, there we go. And something to consider too is, and I had to say it to this gentleman. I had to say it this way to this gentleman. Um, I asked him first of all. I said, "Have you written any books of Masonic philosophy? Have you published any rituals? Are you a member who has national recognition as a historian within the lodge?" No, none of those. Most men aren't. And so I'm like, okay, in Freemasonry, you're prompted to in essence, how do I say this? You're prompted to interpret the lodge as you see fit in your own understanding. It's really good because it opens it wide open, hey? And so I'm like, okay. So I will interpret the craft, your Masonic lodge, I will interpret it the way your primary philosophers interpret it, that it's a mystical organization, rather than how the average man on the street interprets it, which is just simply, I'm going to interact with my brothers. I'm going to
Okay.
maybe play some cards, and it's a harmless organization. There's no spirituality to it. There's no religious component to it. Do I
Hmm.
interpret it the way that the man on the street interprets it, or will I interpret it the way that the Masonic lodge's own luminaries have interpreted it?
That's such
That's
a
the
cop
direction.
out.
I know, but at the same time, you can use that, and I
Hmm.
have. And so I was like, all right, dude, well, you haven't written any works of philosophy. You're just the average Joe.
Hmm.
I will interpret your lodge in the perspective that your historians and philosophers have interpreted, that this is a mystical school. In
Hmm.
fact, here we are. This is Henry Clausen. He was literally the top dog within the Scottish Rite branch of Freemasonry. His book, Emergence of the Mystical. I mean, it just blatant like that. Here we are. And so, whether we worship at the shrines and embrace the doctrines of Zoroaster or Muhammad or Confucius or Moses or Buddha or those of the Christian world, we know that there moves among us every day a timeless force, greater and stronger than ourselves. This belief is a starting point of human and scientific progress. You get statements like this all the way through, Melissa.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is how your top guys are interpreting it. Hello, we've got some issues now as Christians you need to be aware of. Oh my. Does this sound like new thought? Does this sound like new thought or what? This is
Read it.
page 83. When man has faith in himself, he
Mm.
rejects unreality. Dot dot dot. You can learn to be self-reliant, to stand upon your own feet, not dependent upon persons or things outside yourself. Then in
Yeah.
essence you shall be free.
I couldn't
Ah,
have quoted that. That sounds like Ralph Waldo Emerson, his self-reliance essay.
yeah, yeah,
100%.
100%,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like, oh yeah. So
Well,
this sense of universalism, and then this idea that we can become perfected, even to the point of becoming Christ or Christ-like,
yeah.
uh, big problems. One more
So,
quick quote.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. This is from J.D. Buck. He was a Mason and a Theosophist. In the 1910s and 1920s, he traveled around giving lectures. This is from his book, Mystic Masonry and the Greater Mysteries of Antiquity. It is far more important that men should strive to become Christ than that they should believe that Jesus was Christ. If
Ugh.
the Christ state can be attained by but one human being during the whole evolution of the race, then the evolution of man is a farce, and human perfection an impossibility. Jesus is no less divine because all men may reach the same divine perfection. And you find these kinds of quotes scattered like all through the mystical arguments within the lodge. Again, most men in the lodge don't even read their own works.
Yes.
Sort of
Okay.
like, oh, what are you talking about? This is just a place where I come and, have a beer with my buddies and play some cards.
So this is where it gets real ambiguous. I have so many questions because the reason why Freemasonry was never on my radar is that most people that I've known that go there are just like, yeah, just go to hang out. We don't even talk about
Yeah,
spiritual things. I don't know what people make a fuss about. It reminds me of many things, but one thing is how you'll talk to like a Mormon, an LDS, that doesn't realize what their own church teaches, especially the new converts that didn't grow up in the LDS church. It's almost as if they just want them to get baptized right away, but they have no idea what they just signed up for. And a lot of Mormons don't know their own history, and
right.
that reminds me of on some levels. So why would anybody want to join the lodge then? What's the point of it?
Well, I mean, there's an appeal. First of all, this is a secretive organization or a society with secrets. That's how it likes to bill
What are the
itself.
secrets though? Yeah, like what?
Uh, and,
Tell
and,
me
and Melissa,
more. Yeah.
none of this, nothing is secret.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the greatest secrets is nothing is secret.
True.
You know?
That's true. You're, it's not really secret because you know everything. That's
Well,
really
I
funny.
mean,
That's true.
but it is funny.
Mhm.
Everything's been published. Everything's been out in the open.
Yeah.
Demographically, the lodge is dying and has been dying for like, decades already. It's
Hmm.
losing its appeal, especially for a younger audience, because a younger age group isn't really interested in joining organizations. That's not really how we're wired anymore. And
Yep.
so historically, it was a very powerful movement in the 40s, 50s, 60s. My goodness, every podunk town across Canada and the United States, across Europe, all around the world, it seemed that the lodge had a big footprint, and it did. It was the largest
Well, yeah,
fraternal
like presidents.
organization.
Like I
Oh,
remember
yeah,
lots of presidents being a part of it, Joseph Smith, like a lot of prominent people were Masons, which is
yes,
kind of the
yes,
heart of why I'm asking this question because it's like,
right.
I mean, is that a red flag? Why would somebody join? If there's a lot of fluidity between these beliefs, is that necessarily something for a Christian to just kind of point and be like, oh, they're a red flag because they're a Mason, when that person's that's in the lodge probably doesn't realize that this stuff exists,
Which
So
is why we have to extend grace.
yeah.
Okay, I can say, all right, Masonic philosophy is
Mm,
antithetical to the biblical worldview because it is. But the person in the lodge may not really even have especially if they're claiming to be a Christian, they may not have the discernment. They may not have even thought of it. They joined because, well, daddy joined and granddaddy joined. And this is where my friends are. You're going to see a lot of that. And so I always try to extend grace to the average person in the lodge because honestly, they've probably just joined for very benign, very benign reasons. Like this is what we do. This is how I can help my community because they do good works. Well, I mean, my goodness, yeah, I know.
yeah.
Uh, and if good works is a litmus test, well, so
Yeah.
what? Whip de do.
We
Uh,
all pass then. Because
yeah,
we all do
exactly,
these good things. So if that's the
exactly.
case, is it a danger then? So is it a danger for somebody to join if these people aren't even aware of this spiritual stuff? It's not like it doesn't sound like to me that if you join the lodge, then you're gonna have like the upstairs Freemasons come down and try to tell you like you're basically God, and or
Right,
these levels. Like yeah, I think you know where I'm going. I'm trying
right.
to make sense of this world and why it's a fascination, number one, because a lot of people, even in society, they think a lot of things are connected to the Freemasons and how the government runs. And like conspiracy theorists love this stuff. I mean, how deep does this go? I mean, because it obviously seems that on a very big lay person level, somebody would argue and say that no, there's no spiritual danger because that's just kind of over here. Like this is in this other arena or this other area. Nobody's trying to evangelize you. So yeah, kind of take that. But let me clarify my question. What is the danger with it? In that regard, like with what we're talking about, and you're talking about a footprint here and the secrets that go on, and these levels of masonry. Tell me about those things, and what would you say the danger would be, and why would anybody, need to know about it?
Well, okay. So when it comes to the issue of is this dangerous? And if somebody walks into the lodge, they're unaware of the teachings of the lodge. They become a member, and they go through the rituals. And on the surface, it may not seem dangerous to them. It's almost like asking the question: is it dangerous for somebody to walk into, let's say, a Mormon church, a Mormon steakhouse?
Mhm.
Um, Same
Yeah,
thing.
I
Is
was
it
gonna say,
dangerous?
huh? I never put that together. A steakhouse. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
so sad.
Well,
I'm mad I didn't think of that first.
yeah. And of course it is. Of course there's a problem with it.
Hmm.
Right off the bat, there's an issue, especially if you are a Christian. You should be doing some homework to figure out, all right, what is the worldview being offered by this organization? Be discerning, do some homework, wrestle through it. Um, and then, okay, in terms of its footprint, and yes, you're right. The conspiracy world is full of conversations about how Freemasonry runs the world.
Hmm.
No, Freemasonry doesn't run the world. Uh,
Say it, Carl.
yeah, it
Say it
doesn't.
louder.
This is what runs the world. The DNA spiritual expression, or pardon me, the spiritual expression of Genesis chapter 3, which
Mm,
runs through our spiritual DNA.
mm,
Our sin runs the world. And behind that are those powers and principalities that whisper to us, did God really say? You'll not surely die.
yep,
You'll be wise. You will know right from wrong. That's what really runs the world.
yep.
All the rest of it is just window dressing. The heart of
Hmm.
it remains a Genesis 3 problem. That's the heart of it. And so, yes, Freemasonry offers its members a network, no question. And men of power will operate
Hmm.
within those networks for sure. Yes, many US presidents, not all, but many US presidents have been members of the Masonic Lodge. America has a history with deep history within the lodge. If you go to Washington, D.C., it's a Masonic city. It's laid out as that perfect square.
Yeah.
The heart of it is built in the context of your Masonic history as a nation. It's 100% there. There's power, there's networks. That's how it goes. It doesn't mean that it is the final operating network of the world. Not at all. In fact, demographically, like I said a few minutes ago, it's dying out. But
Yep.
it has put its worldview footprint firmly in the soil of our culture.
Hmm.
Universalism being a big one. This idea that, we all are worshiping the same God. We can all gather together in this interfaith context. When I go to events like the Parliament of World Religions, and I've been to the Parliament a handful of times already, and I've been to a number of other interfaith events, it reminds me basically what Freemasonry's works of philosophy are teaching. That it's universalism, it's religious universalism. There is nothing special about Jesus
Mm.
because he is at the same level as all the other great spiritual reformers or spiritual teachers of the past. And it doesn't matter if I worship Christ or and you worship Allah and you worship Krishna. We gather together in this great work. That's another term that's often thrown around. We're doing this great work, which is really the concept of we are building all this together in a universal sense, this oneness of everything, which then has it has a spin-off that goes beyond just philosophy or even just religion. That's the spin-off that really took me down the road of trying to understand the political side of internationalism, going to the United Nations events,
Yeah.
global governance events, because I'm like, oh, it's that same context.
Hmm.
We're all going to become this in the Masonic language. We're all going to become the brotherhood of man.
Hmm.
That's their term, and we're going to gather around the fatherhood of God.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, in terms of my story, that's kind of where I started to go. All right, from Freemasonry, I kind of jumped into international politics because I saw that parallel perspective. Didn't mean that Freemasons are all running around in New York City at the big glass house of the United Nations. No, they're not. Some are, absolutely. I've been there. But
Hmm.
it's it's that parallel perspective of universalism,
It seems
ultimately
like
a
it's
sense of
like a,
oneness.
yeah, it seems like it's like a peripheral side chick to the main point. You know what I mean? Where it's
Yep.
just there's yeah. You're talking about Genesis 3. That's the core main point, and how that looks and distributes itself
Hmm.
is different. And it seems like Freemasonry was one of those avenues, and even then it's not completely universal amongst its members.
Right.
It seems like a lot of people with power were Freemasons, which
Yes.
segues me into another question here, because we're talking about like footprints. We're talking about how this has kind of been a part of American history in this regard, but you talked about levels as well. So let's segue into this for just a second, because there's that guy that walked up to you. You said that he was like a 30th degree Freemason or something.
Yep. 30
Third degree
seconds. Yes.
black belt or something. So yeah. So what are these levels? And it seems like the people in power. Let's talk Joseph Smith, for example. Joseph Smith was a Freemason, and people mention that like it's an important bit of information. And for somebody like me who knows very, very little about Freemasonry, I look at like their temple work, right? The things that they do in the temple and that everybody knows about. It's not secret. I mean, we know. It's a lot of it is free. Yeah, it's not very secret. It's a lot of it is a Freemason stuff. So can you connect those dots for me?
Yeah, for sure. So there are various levels within the lodge, and there's what's called the Blue Lodge, which is the foundation lodge. That's really where everything kind of is supposed to coalesce. And
Mhm.
all there are 3 degrees in the Blue Lodge: the first degree, second degree, and then the Master Mason degree. In the Master Mason degree, the third degree, when you enter and you do the oaths, I'll read you the oath.
Yeah, the secret
Okay, this
oath
is this
that
is
we know.
yeah, exactly. This is an older version of the oath. I'm thinking that there's probably and any of the newer versions will be very similar. Taken from "Look to the East: A Ritual" by Ralph Lester. All this I most, as a Masonic member going into the third degree, as I'm doing my ritual, all this I most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear, with a firm and steadfast resolution to keep and perform the same, without the least all of a sudden my tongue's tied, sorry, least equivocation, mental reservation, or self-evasion whatever, binding myself under no less penalty than that of having my body severed in two, my bowels torn from the thence and burned to ashes, and these scattered before the four winds of heaven, that no more remembrance might be had among men or masons of so vile a wretch as I should be, should I, in the least, knowingly or wittingly violate or transgress this, my master mason's obligation. So help me God and keep me steadfast. Lovely. Why would I want to join that?
What exactly my point. Why would anybody want to join this? What is the oath? What is he oathing? What is he? I don't understand. What does
Well,
that get him?
so what you're doing is you are swearing secrecy. You will not divulge the secrets of the lodge. You will not divulge what you have been taught.
But
So
everybody,
again, this is it.
but we
No,
know
no, no,
that
I know.
I.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't
But
matter.
why would you
You've
keep it
you've said
secret?
I'm going to join. You said I'm going to join. So here's how you are now contractually bound to the organization that you have just sworn your allegiance to. Lovely, isn't it?
Oh, that's so lovely. I'm sure that they have. But, see, but that's the thing though, is like, I guess I'm trying to get into the head. Like, you know how we do. We're just trying to,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. And I don't understand what the incentive is. Is it knowledge? Is it just, oh, look at me? Is it power? What secrets do they have that you would take an oath like that for?
I know.
And pledge allegiance to this lodge, if you will. What is behind that door to even make that worth it for them?
I know. And every man would probably have to answer that for himself, why he would be joining the lodge. Again, I think for the most part, this is what I've encountered as I've had conversations. The average person who has joined has not joined to discover some secret history of antiquity. They haven't joined for spiritual purposes. They've joined for the purpose of, yeah, I'm going to sit down with my neighbors. I'm going to do good for my community, or I'm going to better my business. This is going to be a good way for me to network my business. That type of thinking. But then all of a sudden you're diving into, oh, okay, the rituals have a meaning. The symbols of your lodge all have meaning. There's a philosophy behind all of this. There's a worldview behind all of this, and none of that is hidden. And this is one of the great ironies of the lodge, from what I've gathered working through their material, is that the average Mason doesn't take the time to ever understand what they're actually involved in. And this is actually a lamentation that you'll hear from certain Masonic authors, especially some of the more well-known ones of the past, going to the effect of not 1 in 10,000 Masons knows what he's involved with. And in a way, they're like, that's actually kind of okay.
That sounds like a lie to me. I mean,
Well,
that's not
yes,
okay.
of
You're
course
finding,
it's not.
I use this example all the time of for New Thought. And for all of these worldviews that you don't realize you're signing up for when you are involved with certain things. And this is probably, the more I learn about this, the more I'm listening, it sounds like this is a good example of that. It's like you think you're joining a boys club. And in reality, there's like this undergirding worldview that you are unknowingly signing up for, and it could,
Right,
yeah, have like a lasting effect on your faith.
right. And then as you go through the rituals, as you go through the degree, the various degrees. So you have the first 3 degrees. That's, like I said before, the Blue Lodge. But then if you want, and you don't have to, if you want, you can advance up 2 different branches, one being the Scottish Rite, one being the York Rite. And each one of those has a whole series of other rituals and ceremonies, and you will advance your way up. So when I had that conversation with the gentleman who said he was a 32nd degree Mason, that means he's been in the Scottish Rite, and he's risen up to that level within the Scottish Rite organization.
Isn't the
But
highest the 33rd or something?
yes, 33rd, which is
Okay.
both honorary and I believe it's more than honorary. I believe also I have to back up on that. But yes, the 33rd degree is an honorary degree, often bestowed upon people who are fairly prominent or important. I believe Ronald Reagan became like an honorary degree, or received an honorary master, or pardon me. Oh, sorry, Melissa. My tongue's all tied.
You're fine. No worries. You're
But I
good.
believe that Ronald Reagan, I'd have to go back again and look at it, but I believe that Ronald Reagan received like an honorary Masonic certificate or something like that too. So hey, just to make the claim that, yeah,
But what does
one of
that
us.
mean? Like, why wouldn't what does a 33rd degree Mason mean? And what does that,
Oh,
how,
it means,
yeah.
yeah. For a 33rd, not for a 32nd, for a 33rd, it means that you're somebody.
Is
You're
this all
special.
this is about? Is a big power play? Like, look at me. Is
Well,
that
look, if we're honest about so much of life, it's often that way, isn't it?
huh? Yeah.
I mean, really, yeah. Um, I'm the CEO. I'm the top dog. Um, I've seen this in the church, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
This is part of that human problem.
Yeah. Exactly. It sounds like it's a lot of power play, but it also makes me wonder because I always thought that like if you're this Mason that's high in the ranks, I just assumed that you get to know all of these secret satanic rituals behind closed doors or something because that's what people make it into be is that especially conspiracy theorists is that oh they like drink blood or something and they go and they do sacrifices and like is that what we're talking about here like how crazy does this actually get
All I can say, because I've never joined, all I can say is from what the material that I've worked through in terms of their own literature, I don't see that within their own literature. But it doesn't matter if that was there or not. There's still a biblical problem,
mm,
regardless of the sensational claims that sometimes are out there. There still is a fundamental biblical problem of universalism, perfectibility, looking for spiritual light. When you take your oath, the first degree, and I've been in Masonic lodges and I've seen the setup. You've had your eyes blindfolded.
mm,
You've been divested of any metal, wedding rings, belt buckles. You have a shirt. You've been given a shirt with your left breast open. You've got one of your pant legs rolled up, and you've got a blindfold on and a noose around your neck called a cable tow. And you are brought into the lodge, and in your blindness, you're taken around the lodge perimeter, the inside perimeter, and you're given an explanation of symbols and an explanation of what's happening. And eventually you find yourself kneeling before an altar, blindfolded, stating to the effect that what is it that you desire? That you desire light. And at that point, the blindfold comes off. And before that, you've got this little, your little blood oath, and they give you a sharp little jab with a knife or a spear to draw a little bit of blood, just to emphasize the seriousness of the oath you're going to take. And then the blindfold comes off. You're kneeling before a man that you're now calling the worshipful master. Typically, the Bible is on the altar, but if you're doing this, let's say in a Muslim country, it'll be the Quran. And then there is a light right above you that turns on, and you are illuminated. And of course, it has a meaning, a symbolic meaning, that all of this is a quest, a journey to find illumination, spiritual illumination. We're not talking about fluorescent light bulbs. We're talking about spiritual enlightenment. That's the journey. That's the quest. And so as you going through the degree work, so going through their works of philosophy over and over and over again, it's about this sense of enlightenment, this search for light. And you don't need to have, as I said, you don't need to have all of the the speculative, hey, this drinking blood and all the rest. It's already weird as it is. It doesn't have to. You don't have to go into anything else. It's already at the base level a problem.
yeah
Like, hello.
yeah yeah blood you lost me at blood oath you lost me a long time ago with their ritual stuff man is that's just insane to me I have so
Well,
many
it
other
is kind of
questions.
wild.
Yeah, I know if I have more questions on this, I know people will. You said that this is dying out. Um, so how much of a
The,
concern is Freemasonry then? Like what would be the biggest takeaway in that regard that you would leave with my
oh,
audience?
oh,
Yeah.
very simple. Very simple. The biggest takeaway is yes, organizationally, demographically, it has been dying out for a number of decades already.
Hmm.
The worldview, the worldview is not dying out. The
Yeah.
worldview is even more powerful than it was before,
Mm.
especially as we have entered an age when the Christian worldview has been jettisoned and is now being replaced. And it is being
Yeah.
replaced with a Romans 1 perspective. It's being replaced with a universalistic perspective. It's being replaced with, in essence, the rebuilding of a new Tower of Babel. And this just fits hand in glove with it. To me, that's where the real rubber hits the road. It's the world view that will continue on those ideas of I can achieve perfection on my own, or through an organization, through a group, through these rituals, I can achieve perfection. Oh, I can be enlightened. I can be illuminated with secret knowledge. Um,
Mhm.
hello, yes,
Yeah.
or we all worship the same God. Doesn't matter what you call this God.
Mhm.
You know, you see where I'm going?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that this is a testament to what you do though too, is you've written a book, um, Game of Gods. It's really thick. It's actually a recommended read in my book in one of the I think it's chapter, pretty sure it's chapter 2. Because one area where this has kind of been prominent is in these governmental areas in like the Parliament of World Religions. I mean, you're talking about groups of people coming together that are powerful and have influence and are teaching the things that you're talking about. So it just, again, it's the peripheral
Yep,
thing. Freemasonry is just one of those, but now you have this core Genesis 3 message, DNA, kind of gaining traction in these areas. And you go into these areas and you report back. This is kind
right.
of just what you do. And so, if there, you said that you write a lot about this. Is there a website that people can visit where they could probably look up more information on this? Because there's so much more here that I want to go over. But for the sake of time, for reference, where would you direct people if they wanted to learn more?
If they wanted to read the essay that I wrote to that 32nd degree Mason, they can go to my
Mhm.
website, forcingchange.org, and it's
Got
on
it.
the front page in the article section. Just hit the article button, and it'll pop up in the front in that page. Um, this is really interesting for me to have this conversation with you, Melissa, because I don't talk about Freemasonry a lot. It's actually that's a part of my story, and it was a really important part of where I began my research. But
Yeah.
golly, from the mid to later 90s on up until still recently, I dived deeper into the realm of global governance,
Hmm.
internationalism at the political level, interfaithism. I was one of the early Christian researchers on transhumanism.
Yeah.
Um, going to transhumanist events
Burning
well
Man.
before, yeah, Burning Man. I've become very well known for my attendance and my work with, inside of Burning Man,
Yeah.
with our Camp of the Unknown God. But yeah, that's my background as a little farm boy being asked to join the lodge and being told, or having a statement given to me, which probably was meant to appease fears I never had.
Yeah.
Carl, we're not Satanists.
Why would you say that? Why would
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
interesting. One little
Yeah.
sentence.
Oh,
Yeah.
and a fun little point within, because just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not sure when you're going to be airing this, Melissa, but a couple of weeks ago, I was at Paganicon,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
largest gathering of witches in the U.S. Midwest, indoor gathering. There's a bigger outdoor gathering, but biggest indoor gathering. One of the things that's quite fascinating within the Wicca community, especially the Gardnerian branch of the Wiccan community, is they recognize that Freemasonry played a big role in the structural development of their 3 degree system.
Interesting.
And that's not hidden. I mean, they openly
Yeah.
talk about that. They openly write about that. So, all right, the lodge, though demographically it's older now, it's has lost the organizational capacity, or the even the let's say the appeal that it had in
Hmm.
previous generations.
Hmm.
Um, it has had a remarkable influence in Western culture in terms of shifting us away from that biblical sense that Jesus Christ is exclusive to saying, oh, the road is broad. Let's go down the broad road.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in our history. I can totally see that. Now, in the last few minutes, I would love for you to kind of elaborate more on this other work that you do. You mentioned Burning Man, you write a lot. Why don't you talk more about those places that you visit and why you visit it?
Oh, for sure. So yes, I'm known for going to Burning Man, and I've been to Burning Man 5 times. I got my ticket again for this year. We set up a camp called the Camp of the Unknown God, which does three things. One, we're doing outreach. We're having conversations for Christ, and that has been awesome, absolutely awesome. It has been exciting to see how even just the name of our camp, which is based out of Acts 17, will compel
Yeah.
conversations. They're like, what camp are you part of? Oh, we're the Camp of the Unknown God. Well, what's that about? So we've
Perfect
had some,
name.
oh,
Great name.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that's been incredible. And I could tell you, I could tell you stories for the next 3 hours about what happened at Burning Man 2024, the
I
people we
remember
came in
that.
contact with. Yes.
Wasn't
Oh,
there
it
like
was
a
it was
crazy
intense.
flood or something?
That was 2023. Yeah.
Oh,
I was there for that too. I was there for the, yeah, it was that was nuts. Uh,
yeah, that
oh,
was insane.
we got muddy and it made international news, but there you go. And
I
then we're
believe.
also there doing research to understand the impact that Burning Man has in the broader culture,
Hmm.
because it does. My goodness, it does. When the Smithsonian Institute in 2019 dedicated their entire Renwick building to Burning Man, you know it has made a cultural imprint. No
Hmm.
question. No
Hmm.
question.
Yeah.
And then we're there because there are world level conversations on subjects that way, greatly transcend what's happening at Burning Man. Conversations on artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
global governance, cryptocurrency. We were at a workshop last year led by a lobbyist trying to bring a sea change into the world of the legal world and give nature the same rights as human beings, giving nature the fundamental rights as human beings. And
That's a
this is
slippery slope.
wild.
Yeah,
It is
that is crazy.
dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's already being discussed in certain jurisdictions. Um, so that's, those are the kinds of conversations happening. Everybody thinks of Burning Man as, oh, it's a great big party in the desert. That's absolutely there. It's
Yeah,
hedonistic.
kind of like Freemasonry is a boys' club.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's hedonistic. There is debauchery. There is,
Yeah.
some pretty really raw stuff. As one of our friends in our little circle of campmates have said, that's almost like a psyops to keep Christians away. And it's
Hmm.
certainly a psyops for people to all of a sudden be blinded to the fact that you're having like literally World Economic Forum level kinds of conversations.
Hmm.
It's a kind of a combination of the World Economic Forum and Mardi Gras. Everybody's focusing on the Mardi Gras side. Nobody's paying attention to the conversations taking place, let alone the fact that it's an incubator for the very products you're using. Hint, hint, Google.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, Eric Schmidt, the CEO that made Google what it is today as a global powerhouse, took the position or got the position in part because he had Burning Man on his resume. So,
Wow.
hello.
That's a weird
Yeah,
thing to kind of put on your it's weird to look at that and think, "Oh, we have something in common outside
but
of
it's
just the Mardi Gras party."
right, but it's only weird for those of us outside of Silicon Valley. Inside Silicon Valley, Burning Man's essential.
That is so int
So
why
so
though? Why is
so
that
much
like
so because this was San Francisco's event originally. This came out of the San Francisco countercultural movement and was birthed out of that milieu in the mid 1980s. Of course, there's already a time period that elapsed between the counterculture of the 60s and 70s, but the mid 1980s when it began, and then it has morphed, grown, changed, evolved into what it is today. So much so that I think it was 2014 when HBO came out with their miniseries Silicon Valley. Elon Musk went to the first showing of it and then chastised in very colorful language the producer, the director, and the cast because none of them had been to Burning Man, and if you don't go to Burning Man, you won't get Silicon Valley.
it reminds me of almost a evolved Freemasonry thing. because
Oh, it's a
it's
search for right. It's a search for
well,
your
it's
higher
like
self.
a yeah, like a who do you like, oh, you're one of us kind of thing. I remember there was this one guy, he was actually in my church at the time. This was so long ago, but he was wearing a Freemason pin. And I was like, oh, that looks familiar. He's like, yeah, I'm a Mason. I was like, well, what does that mean? I mean, isn't that bad, right? Because I didn't know anything. I just knew that all I've ever heard of it was, secret society stuff, things going on. He's like, no, it's actually gotten me some perks. I'll go on a plane, for example, and the stewardess, recognized my pin and she put me in first class kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's weird, I guess. And I just never forgot that conversation. But that's kind of what this reminds me of is like, oh, Burning Man's on your resume. Here's a first class seat.
Right.
You're,
Right. Well,
you're, you're
again,
one of
back
us. Yeah.
back to that networking. You see
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. But I mean, this is a common human experience, right?
Mhm.
We see this in all kinds of settings, not just Burning Man, not just Freemasonry. I've seen it within Christian institutions. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You have a seat of prominence.
Hmm.
Again, it's that same thing, that same human problem. But this is interesting, and this connects the two together. So, the founder of Burning Man, Larry Harvey,
Hmm.
his and this is where the conspiracy road all of a sudden can kind of go off. But there's more nuance, way more nuance. So hey, just kind of let your rein in your horses. Larry Harvey, the founder of Burning Man, his father was a Mason. And his father held to the more mystical side of Freemasonry. And Larry Harvey himself would read his dad's works and was very interested in the concepts of
Interesting.
religious universalism, religious pluralism, comparative religion. Larry himself would always say he's an atheist. That's how he would have labeled himself. He's passed away now, but his perspective ultimately was atheism. Nevertheless, he would read the works of William James, which goes back to Swedenborg. He would read the works of other philosophers, other
That's another
religious
interview.
philosophers. Yes, other religious philosophers, and he was always intrigued by comparative religion, comparative mythology, and how all this could fit within a feeling, a organic group experience, which is exactly what happens at Burning Man.
That's very interesting that his dad was a Mason and he read the work. Yeah, I could see where some people would listen to that and be like, connecting the dots and the conspirator. I can see the conspiracy theorists like just their brain cells firing right now. I can feel it.
Right. Stick to the worldview because the rest of it becomes just speculative, but stick to the worldview. And the
Yeah.
fact that the influence of that worldview will certainly be something that is passed through our culture as we are constantly playing with it, refining it, reorganizing it, projecting it back into our school systems, our sadly our churches,
Hmm.
popular culture. We can't get away from this because it's a Genesis 3 worldview problem.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so glad that you brought it back to the core of that. This is fascinating. Guys, be sure to check out Carl's work. Again, I'm going to leave everything that we talked about, any relatable material to help you further your research in this. It'll be in the description, as well as Carl's work, the book that he's written and his website as well. Carl, is there anything that you want to add before we sign off today?
Well, yeah, there's one thing I would like to add, and that's just simply thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for taking the time. No, I'm serious. Thank you for taking
yeah.
the time to having a conversation like this. It's a bit of an obscure conversation. I get that. But I do hope that the core of it resonates with your audience, that they will realize and recognize that, oh, just like everything else, that this is an alternative spiritual message that is in juxtaposition, in contradiction to the biblical worldview. Stick to God's word. Use God's word as the lens then to understand the world around you so that you can become an effective ambassador for Christ.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for coming on.